You're being selfish, Sarah. It's just a venue. Family shares. My aunt didn't ask me to give up my childhood home for my cousin's wedding. She demanded it while holding up the keys to the Lakehouse my dead parents bought 17 years ago. The house they died driving home to after closing. When I said no, my cousin Brittany smiled, that smile I'd learned to fear, and said, "Well, I already sent the invitations. 200 guests. Lakefront ceremony. Unless you want to be the one to tell everyone you ruined my big day. Before I tell you how I took back what was mine, drop a comment and let me know the worst thing a family member ever tried to steal from you." I read every single one. I looked at the keys dangling from Aunt Carol's manicured fingers. The keychain was the one my mom made in a pottery class, with my dad's thumbprint pressed into the clay. Seeing it in Carol's hand felt like watching someone wear my mother's skin. My pulse should have been racing. Normal people panic when they're cornered. But I'm a real estate attorney. I spend 40 hours a week reading property contracts and finding the invisible loopholes that billion-dollar developers miss. And right now, staring at those keys, I wasn't panicking. I was calculating. Because in real estate law, there's a principle we live by. Title beats possession. It doesn't matter who holds the keys. It matters whose name is on the deed. I stared at that keychain, and for just a second, I wasn't 32 years old sitting in a Starbucks negotiating with thieves. I was 15 again, standing in my principal's office, while Aunt Carol signed the guardianship papers. I remember watching her fountain pen move across the page, the scratching sound it made. She smiled at me then, too. The same smile Brittany wore now. She told me I was so lucky to have family who would take me in. She told me everything would be okay. She told me my parents would have wanted this. I believed her because I was 15 and my parents were 3 days dead and I needed someone, anyone, to tell me the world wasn't ending. But she lied, and I've spent 17 years paying for that lie. The teenager in me wanted to cry. Wanted to beg. Wanted to ask why my dead parents' house, bought with their life insurance money, was now apparently available for my cousin's Instagram perfect wedding. But I wasn't that girl anymore. That girl died somewhere between the funeral and the first time Carol made me sleep on the basement couch because Brittany needed my old bedroom for her walk-in closet. The real estate lawyer took over, and real estate lawyers don't cry. We read contracts. I took a slow breath and leaned back in my chair, letting my coffee get cold between us. Fear makes people sloppy. I needed to be surgical. "If I let Brittany use the Lakehouse for the wedding," I said, keeping my voice terrifyingly calm, "who pays for the liability insurance?" Carol blinked. The aggression in her eyes flickered. "What insurance?" "Venue liability insurance. 200 guests. Alcohol service. Lakefront ceremony. If someone drowns, if someone falls off the dock, if someone crashes a golf cart, the venue owner is personally liable." "That's you, Aunt Carol. Since you've been managing the property." I watched the color drain from her face. "The property is worth what now? About 800,000? Court judgments for wrongful death at weddings run between 2 and 5 million. They'll seize the Lakehouse first, then come after your personal assets. Your house, your retirement accounts. Everything." It was mostly true. The insurance part was real. The exact dollar amounts I may have inflated for effect. But they didn't know that. Brittany's smile was gone. "Mom, you said the house was ours. You said Sarah gave up her rights. I gave up my rights." The words hung in the air like smoke. I turned to look at Brittany directly for the first time. She was 28, 3 years younger than me, and she looked like someone who'd never been told no in her entire life. She was wearing a Cartier bracelet that cost more than my first car. Her engagement ring could have paid off my law school loans. And she was sitting there, in her Lululemon and her highlights, acting like I was the problem. "When did I give up my rights, Brittany?" I asked softly. She looked at Carol. Carol looked at her phone. "You never took an interest in the property, Sarah. You moved away for college. You never visited. We assumed. You assumed." I let the words hang. "Let me tell you what I assumed. I assumed that when I turned 18, you'd give me access to my parents' life insurance payout. $450,000. I assumed I'd have a college fund. I assumed I'd have something, anything, from the people who loved me. Instead, I got student loans and a box of their old clothes." Carol's jaw tightened. "We raised you, fed you, clothed you. That money went to your care. Did it? Because I have my old bank statements. You charged me $300 a month in rent starting at age 16. For a basement couch. While Brittany got a BMW for her sweet 16. Brittany's face flushed. "That's different. I was the biological daughter." "I know. You reminded me every single day." The coffee shop felt too small suddenly. Too hot. I could feel the other customers trying not to stare. Carol leaned forward, dropping her voice to a hiss. "You want to do this here? You want to air family business in public? Fine. The Lakehouse is in my name. Has been since your parents died. The insurance money was placed in a trust with me as executor. I used that money to maintain the property, pay the taxes, keep it from falling apart. You're welcome. Show me the trust documents. Silence. Show me the deed with your name on it. More silence. Show me a single receipt for property maintenance in the last 17 years. Carol's lips pressed into a thin line. I don't have to show you anything. The courts awarded me guardianship. That included managing the estate. It's done. Legal. Over. Actually, I said, and I felt that dangerous smile pull at my lips, the one I use when I'm about to destroy someone in a deposition. Guardianship terminates at 18. Estate management, especially for inherited property, requires ongoing documentation. Trusts require annual accountings, and in the state of California, if a guardian fails to provide those accountings, the former ward can petition for a full forensic audit. Retroactive. With penalties. I watched Carol's face change. The confidence cracked just a little. Good. She'd been so certain I was still that grieving 15-year-old who signed whatever papers were put in front of her. She forgot that grieving 15-year-old grew up and went to law school specifically to understand what had been done to her. I didn't go to law school to help people. I went to learn how to fight back. Are you threatening me? Carol asked. Her voice was shaking now. Brittle. No. I'm educating you. Because here's what I've learned in my career. Real estate law is simple. You show me your deed, I show you mine. The one with the superior claim wins. So, I pulled out my phone and opened the Photos app. Would you like to see the original deed to the Lakehouse? The one recorded in 1989 when my parents bought it? The one that lists Michael and Jennifer Torres as sole owners? Or should we skip ahead to the part where you explain how that deed magically transferred to your name without a recorded sale, without a grant deed, and without my signature as the heir? Brittany looked like she was going to be sick. Carol looked like she was going to flip the table. I felt nothing. Just cold. Focused. This was discovery phase, and I was winning. You went through property records? Carol's voice was barely a whisper. I'm a real estate attorney, Carol. It's literally my job. And yes, I pulled the complete chain of title for the Lakehouse. Turns out, your name isn't on it. Never was. You've been paying property taxes on a house you don't own, making improvements on a house you don't own, and now you're trying to rent out a house you don't own for Brittany's wedding. That's called adverse possession. And in California, it requires 5 years of open, notorious, and hostile occupation with paid property taxes. You've been paying the taxes, I'll give you that. But the moment you asked me for permission to use the house, you acknowledged my superior claim. You just destroyed your own adverse possession case. In front of witnesses, the woman at the next table was definitely listening now. She had her phone out, probably texting her book club about the drama. I didn't care. Let her watch. Let everyone watch. I'd been invisible for 17 years. Time to be seen. Carol stood up fast enough to make her chair scrape. This is insane. You can't just show up after 17 years and demand my inheritance? Yes, I can. That's exactly what the law says I can do. I stood up too. Slower, controlled. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me those keys. All of them. You're going to remove all of Brittany's wedding planning materials from the property by 5 p.m. today. And you're going to sign a quitclaim deed acknowledging that you have no ownership interest in the Lakehouse. Or what? Brittany jumped up now too. Her voice was too loud. People were definitely staring. Or what, Sarah? You'll sue us? With what money? You're drowning in student debt. You drive a Honda Civic. You live in a 1-bedroom apartment in the valley. You think you can afford to fight us? She was right about all of that. The debt, the car, the apartment. But she made one critical mistake. She assumed I was the same broke college student who left home 7 years ago. She didn't know that I'd spent the last 3 years working as an associate at Silverman & Rhodes, one of the top real estate litigation firms in Los Angeles. She didn't know that I bill at $350 an hour. She didn't know that I've won cases against developers with legal teams that cost more than her wedding. And she definitely didn't know that 6 months ago, I made partner. You're right, I said. I can't afford to fight you. But my firm can. And here's the thing about real estate litigation, Brittany. We work on contingency for cases we know we'll win, which means I don't pay a dime unless we collect. And when we collect on fraud, conversion of assets, and breach of fiduciary duty, we collect triple damages, plus legal fees. So let's do the math. The Lakehouse is worth $800,000. Triple damages puts us at $2.4 million. Add in 17 years of rent that you never paid me for living in my house. At fair market value. That's about $4,000 a month, times 12 months, times 17 years. That's another $816,000. Call it $3.2 million total. My firm takes 40% of that. I take home $1.9 million after taxes. The coffee shop had gone completely silent. Even the espresso machine seemed to be holding its breath. You're insane, Carol whispered. But she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at her phone, probably texting her husband, probably texting her lawyer, probably realizing that every text she was sending was discoverable in court. I held out my hand. The keys, Carol. Now. She looked at my hand like it was a snake. The wedding is in 6 weeks. We have deposits, contracts. Brittany's been planning this for a year. Then Brittany should have asked the actual owner before she sent the invitations. I kept my hand out. Steady. 5 p.m. Today. Keys and a quitclaim deed. Or I file the lawsuit Monday morning. And I don't just take the Lakehouse. I take everything. Brittany was crying now. Real tears. Black mascara running down her cheeks. Mom, do something. This is my wedding. My special day. You promised me the Lakehouse. You promised. She sounded exactly like she did when we were kids and I had something she wanted. A toy. A book. Attention from a teacher. She'd cry. And Carol would take it from me and give it to her. Every single time. But we weren't kids anymore. And I wasn't giving up anything ever again. Carol dropped the keys in my hand. The pottery keychain was warm from her palm. It felt like getting a piece of my mother back. You're making a mistake, Carol said, her voice shaking with rage. We're family. You do this. You burn that bridge forever. You'll have no one. I closed my fingers around the keys. I burned that bridge 17 years ago, Carol. You just didn't notice because you were too busy spending the ashes. I turned to walk away, then stopped. One more thing. The thing I'd been waiting 17 years to say. And for the record, I did have someone. I had parents who loved me. Who saved every penny to buy that Lakehouse so we could have summers together. Who died driving home from the closing because they were so excited to tell me. You didn't raise me. You housed me. There's a difference. I walked out of that Starbucks with my mother's keychain in my hand and my father's property deed in my phone. I didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear Brittany sobbing. Carol making phone calls. The other customers probably already posting about it on Nextdoor. I didn't care. Let them talk. Let them spin whatever story made them feel better. I had what I came for. I sat in my Honda Civic in the parking lot for maybe 5 minutes, just breathing. My hands were shaking now. Adrenaline crashing. I'd just declared war on the only family I had left. They'd call me ungrateful, selfish, cold. They'd tell everyone that I destroyed Brittany's wedding out of spite. They'd paint me as the villain. And maybe I was. Maybe that's what happens when you get backed into enough corners. You stop being the victim, and you start being the thing they're afraid of. My phone buzzed. Text from Carol. We need to talk about this like adults. I deleted it. Another text. From Brittany. Please, Sarah. I'm begging you. Find it in your heart to forgive us. Don't ruin my day. I blocked the number. Then I opened my photos and looked at the picture I'd been carrying for 3 years. The one I took the day I finally went to the county recorder's office and pulled the complete chain of title. The one that showed me the truth I'd suspected since I was 18 but couldn't prove until I had my law license. The Lakehouse deed had never been transferred to Carol. My parents had put it in a living trust. The Jennifer and Michael Torres family trust. With one beneficiary listed. Sarah Marie Torres. Me. Carol had no ownership. She'd just been living there, paying taxes, acting like it was hers, and banking on the fact that I was too young, too scared, too broke to fight back. She'd stolen 17 years of my life. 17 years of birthday parties I wasn't invited to. Holidays I spent alone. Summers I could have had at my parents' house. She'd stolen my inheritance, my childhood home, and my cousin's respect. But she couldn't steal the deed, because the deed doesn't lie. I drove to the Lakehouse that afternoon. It took 90 minutes with traffic, heading north out of Los Angeles toward Arrowhead. The whole drive, I kept waiting to feel guilty, kept waiting for that voice in my head to say I was being cruel, vindictive, unreasonable. But the voice never came. Instead, I just felt tired, bone-deep tired from carrying around the weight of being nice to people who were never nice to me. I pulled up to the house around 4 p.m. The sun was starting to hang low over the water, turning everything gold. God, it was beautiful. 2 stories, cedar shake siding, a massive deck that ran the entire length of the back. I could see the dock extending into the lake, the boat lift where my dad's fishing boat used to sit. This was the house my parents died for. Literally. They'd been so happy that day. I remember my mom calling me from the title company, her voice bubbling with excitement. We got it, baby. We got our dream house. Wait till you see it. Wait till you see the room we're going to make yours. I never got to see that room. They died 2 hours later when a semi-truck crossed the center line on Highway 18. I'd been waiting at home with Carol, who'd come over to celebrate with us. She was my mom's sister. My mom trusted her. I trusted her. We waited and waited. And then the police came. And after that, nothing was ever mine again. I unlocked the front door with my mother's keychain. The house smelled like Brittany's perfume and fresh paint. They'd redecorated. The walls were now that trendy gray everyone does, not the warm yellow I remembered from the listing photos my mom had shown me. The furniture was all modern, expensive, staged like a magazine shoot. Wedding planning materials covered the dining room table, seating charts, flower arrangements, a binder with Brittany and Chad embossed in gold on the cover. I walked through slowly, methodically, documenting everything on my phone. Video, photos, timestamps. This was evidence. If Carol tried to claim she'd made improvements, I'd have proof of what those improvements were and when they were made. I found Brittany's bedroom upstairs. The master. The room my parents had meant for themselves. It was full of her stuff. Designer clothes with the tags still on. Makeup that probably cost more than my grocery budget. A jewelry box full of things I couldn't afford. I didn't touch anything. Just documented it. Moved on. The room next door was the one that broke me. It was small. A corner room with windows facing the lake. The walls were still that soft blue my mom had loved. There was a twin bed, a small desk, a bookshelf. And on the desk, in a silver frame, was a photo I hadn't seen in 17 years. Me and my mom at my 8th grade graduation. Both of us smiling, her arm around my shoulders. This was my room. The one she'd been talking about on the phone that day. Carol and Brittany had been living here for 17 years, and they'd kept this room exactly the way my mom left it. Not out of love, out of guilt, because even they knew this wasn't theirs. I picked up the photo. My mom looked so young, only 37, 3 years younger than I was now. She'd thought she had so much time. Time to see me graduate high school, college, law school. Time to meet whoever I'd marry. Time to be a grandmother. She'd thought she had decades. She had hours. I sat on the edge of the bed that was supposed to be mine, and let myself cry for the first time since the funeral. Not the pretty, quiet crying you do when you're trying to hold it together. The ugly, chest-heaving, can't-breathe crying of someone who finally feels safe enough to fall apart. I cried for my parents. For the life I should have had. For the 15-year-old girl who trusted her aunt. For every birthday, every holiday, every summer that was stolen. And then I stopped. Because crying doesn't change anything. But a quitclaim deed does. At 4:57 p.m., my phone rang. Carol. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. I declined. Text messages started flooding in. From Carol. From Brittany. From people I barely remembered. Cousins and family friends. All begging me to be reasonable. To think of the family. To not do this. At 5 p.m. Exactly. I called my firm's senior partner. Marcus? It's Sarah. I need to file an emergency motion for unlawful detainer and quiet title. I'm at the property now. The occupants are refusing to vacate. On a Saturday? He sounded amused. Must be good. It's my family. They've been squatting in my deceased parents' house for 17 years, using my inheritance to fund it. I want them out. Silence. Then, send me everything. I'll have the papers filed by Monday morning. And Sarah? Bill this one at full rate. Family or not, theft is theft. I sent him the deed, the chain of title, the documentation of Brittany's wedding planning, photos of everything. 3 years of evidence I'd been gathering. Every property tax payment Carol made in her name. Every social media post Brittany made calling it our family Lakehouse. Every text, every email, every conversation. I documented everything because I knew this day was coming. By 6 p.m., the text messages had turned angry. You're a monster. Your parents would be ashamed. We took you in when no one else wanted you. That last one was from Carol. I read it twice, let the poison of it sink in. Then I typed back one response. My parents left me this house. You stole it. The court will decide who's the monster. Then I blocked them all. I spent that night in my old room. In the twin bed under the window, wrapped in a quilt my grandmother made. Through the window, I could see the lake. Dark and still. The moon reflected on the water just like my mom said it would. She'd been right. It was beautiful here. Peaceful. Worth dying for. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, holding that photo, thinking about alternate timelines. The one where the truck driver didn't fall asleep. Where my parents made it home. Where I grew up in this house with summers on the lake and parents who loved me. Where I never learned words like guardianship and estate law and adverse possession. But that wasn't my timeline. My timeline was this one. Where I learned to fight. The next morning, I woke up to 53 missed calls. I ignored them all. Instead, I made coffee in the kitchen with my parents' old coffee maker that somehow still worked. I sat on the deck and watched the sunrise over the water. And I made a list. First, change all the locks. Done by 10 a.m. A locksmith I found on Yelp. Cash payment. No questions asked. Second, document. And remove all of Brittany's belongings. I called a storage company. They'd pack everything. Store it. Send her the bill. I wasn't cruel enough to throw her stuff in the lake. But I also wasn't going to live surrounded by evidence of her pretending this was hers. Third, call a property lawyer specializing in quiet title actions. I needed someone who wasn't me. Who could be objective. Who could go to war while I stayed clean. I made the call. The consultation was $250. Worth every penny. By Sunday evening, Brittany's wedding binder was in a storage unit. The locks were changed. I had a legal team ready to file Monday morning. And I had my mother's house back. The house they'd died trying to give me. Monday morning, Carol and Brittany showed up at the Lakehouse at 7 a.m. I watched them from the window as they tried their keys. Watched confusion turn to panic. Watched Carol call me 16 times. I didn't answer. At 7:30, the attorney filed the motions. Unlawful detainer. Quiet title action. Emergency restraining order, preventing Carol from entering the property or contacting me. Demand for full accounting of the life insurance money. Demand for rent, paid retroactive to my 18th birthday. The total claim, with interest and penalties, came to just over $3 million. At 8 a.m., Carol and Brittany were served papers on my front deck. I watched through the window as Carol read the first page, then the second, then looked up at the house like she could feel me watching. Her face was the color of old newspaper. Brittany was crying again. They left 20 minutes later. I never saw them in person again. The legal proceedings took 4 months. Carol hired an attorney who argued that she'd acted in good faith as my guardian, that the life insurance money had been spent on my care, that the Lakehouse had been verbally gifted to her by my parents before they died. All lies. My attorneys buried them in discovery. Bank records showing the insurance money deposited into Carol's personal account, not a trust. Property tax records in Carol's name that she'd falsely filed. Social media posts from Brittany over 17 years calling the Lakehouse ours. Text messages between Carol and Brittany discussing selling the property behind my back. Every lie, every fraud, every theft, documented and filed. The judge wasn't sympathetic. In his ruling, he called Carol's actions a profound betrayal of fiduciary duty and awarded me everything. The house, full damages, legal fees. Plus, he ordered Carol to pay restitution for the life insurance money, with 18% interest compounded annually. The total judgment was $2.8 million. Carol's attorney filed for bankruptcy protection. Didn't matter. You can't discharge fraud debt. She'll be paying it until she dies. Brittany's wedding got moved to a Holiday Inn conference room. I know because she posted about it on Instagram with some caption about intimate celebrations and what really matters. She deleted it after everyone commented asking what happened to the Lakehouse wedding. She never got married. Chad called it off 3 weeks before the ceremony. Turns out he'd only been interested in marrying into a family with money and property. Once word got out about the lawsuit, about the bankruptcy, about the fraud, he disappeared. Brittany blamed me, of course. Sent me a 4-page letter about how I'd destroyed her life, ruined her reputation, made her an outcast. I read it once and burned it in the fireplace at the Lakehouse. Carol tried to rebuild a relationship, sent letters, emails, showed up at my firm once before security escorted her out. Every message was the same. Apologies mixed with justifications. I did what I thought was right. You were so young. Your parents would have wanted us to be family. No. My parents wanted me to have a house on a lake and a childhood full of summers. She stole that. And now she was facing the consequences. I moved into the Lakehouse full-time 6 months after the judgment, quit my job at the firm, and opened my own practice doing real estate law for families going through probate disputes. Turns out, there are thousands of people like me, kids whose inheritance got stolen by relatives who were supposed to protect them. I represent them now. I win more often than I lose. Last week, I got a letter from Brittany, no return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Inside was a wedding invitation, not hers. Her younger sister Emma, who I'd barely known, was getting married, and she wanted me there. The note inside said, "I know what Mom did. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. You deserved better. If you can forgive us, we'd love to have you. If you can't, I understand. Either way, I'm sorry." I sat on the deck with that invitation, watching the sun set over the lake, and I thought about bridges, about which ones you burn and which ones you try to rebuild, about forgiveness and family and the difference between the two. I RSVP'd no, not because I'm cruel, not because I hold grudges, but because some bridges are supposed to burn, some connections are supposed to end, and sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is protect the peace you fought so hard to find. I have my parents' house. I have my mother's keychain. I have my father's dream and my own career, built on making sure no one else goes through what I did. I have a guest room that's always ready for the teenagers I represent, the ones who need a place to stay while we fight their battles. I have a life. It's not the one my parents imagined for me, but it's mine, and no one can take it from me ever again. If you've ever had to take back what was stolen from you, you're not alone. Sometimes justice doesn't look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like locks changed and keys reclaimed and a house on a lake where you finally get to breathe.